It was already past 9 at night, but there he was, Mr. Henry, the 90-year-old man, still at work. His hands trembled slightly and his back bent under the weight of years, yet he kept moving. The dim light of the small workshop flickered above him, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the town had already gone quiet, the streets empty and calm, but Henry's world was different. Inside that little room, time seemed to slow down, and his tired eyes stayed fixed on the task at hand. Why would a man almost a century old still be working overtime? What drove him to stay, night after night, long after most people his age had retired to warm homes and loving families? The answer wasn't simple, and it was wrapped in layers of struggle and silent pride. You could see it in his slow, careful movements, the kind of determination that doesn't shout but whispers. Every evening he showed up, not because he had to, but because he wanted to survive, to eat, to keep a small piece of dignity that the world seemed ready to take away. But this night was different. Something was about to happen, something no one in the town expected. A gesture from someone famous, someone whose presence would shake the quiet streets and change Henry's life forever. It started with a simple glance, a chance meeting that would soon become the story everyone was talking about. And this was just the beginning. Henry's days were long, but his routine was steady, almost like clockwork. Every morning, just before the sun peeked over the rooftops, he would wake up in his small, worn-down apartment at the edge of town. The walls were thin, and the furniture was old, but Henry never complained. He brewed a simple cup of tea, then got ready for another day at the workshop, a place he had been going to for nearly 50 years. Most people in town knew Henry as the old man who works late. They saw him leave early in the morning and come home late at night, always carrying a small bag with a modest lunch, or sometimes just a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Few ever stopped to ask why. To them he was just part of the background, a hard-working man, maybe a little lonely, but someone who kept to himself and never made a fuss. Henry had no family nearby. His children had moved far away, chasing lives in bigger cities. His wife had passed many years ago, leaving him alone but never broken. The few friends he had were gone now too, lost to time or distance. What remained was his stubborn spirit and a deep sense of pride that ran through every wrinkle on his face. But underneath that proud exterior was a daily struggle. Henry worked overtime not because the job demanded it, but because he had to. Every extra hour meant a few more coins in his pocket, enough to buy a meal or pay the heating bill during the cold months. His pension was small, barely enough to cover rent, and he refused to rely on charity or handouts. Instead, he chose to work hard and steady because he believed in keeping his own dignity, even if that meant exhaustion or pain. Some nights, after a long day, Henry would sit quietly on the bench outside his apartment, watching the stars, wondering how life had brought him here. He wasn't angry or bitter, he was just tired. Tired, yes, but also determined. Determined to keep going, to survive, to live with a quiet grace no one in town really understood. People passed by him every day but rarely stopped to see the man behind the tired eyes. They didn't know about the memories he carried, the sacrifices he made, or the loneliness that filled his small home. To most, Henry was just an old man working overtime, until one night, when everything changed. Working at 90 was not easy. Every morning, Henry woke with aches that no medicine seemed to touch. His knees creaked when he stood, and his hands sometimes trembled so badly that he had to pause just to steady himself. But despite the pain, he forced himself to move. The work was slow, careful, sometimes frustrating, but quitting was never an option. Not for him. There were days when the exhaustion hit him like a heavy wave. He'd finish a long shift and sit down on a cold bench outside the workshop, closing his eyes and trying to breathe through the tiredness. Sometimes, his body wanted to give in, to stop moving, but his mind pushed harder. Just one more hour. Just one more step. That was his mantra, repeated silently over and over. Loneliness was another kind of pain. The silence in his apartment was thick, broken only by the ticking of an old clock or the distant hum of traffic. There was no one waiting for him at home, no warm meal prepared by loving hands, just empty chairs and shadows. On some nights, Henry would sit by the window, watching families walk past, parents holding hands with their children, couples laughing quietly under street lamps. He'd smile faintly but feel a hollow ache deep inside. Sometimes, memories would wash over him, bright flashes of better days. He remembered the house he once lived in, filled with the laughter of his wife and children. How they used to gather around the table, sharing stories and meals, their faces glowing with warmth. He recalled her gentle smile, the way she used to sing softly as she cooked, the feeling of holding his children close. Those moments felt so far away, now like distant stars shining just beyond reach. But the years had changed everything. His children had left, chasing their own lives in distant cities. His wife's laughter was now just an echo in his mind. And the house, sold long ago to cover debts. All that remained was Henry, standing alone against time. The town knew of Henry's struggle, though no one talked about it openly. They saw him working late, sometimes slipping into the shadows when they passed by. Some felt pity but didn't know how to help. Others admired his grit but kept their distance, unsure of how to reach out without embarrassing him. Old Henry, they'd whisper, shaking their heads with a mix of respect and sadness. That poor man, still working at his age. Yet life went on, and the town moved past him, caught up in its own busy rhythm. Once a neighbor had tried to offer him a warm meal, but Henry politely declined, insisting he could manage on his own. His pride was strong, and he didn't want charity. He wanted to stand tall, even if his legs were weak. There were nights when he almost gave up, when the pain in his body and heart seemed too much to bear. But something inside held him back from surrender. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was simply the stubbornness of a man who had faced far worse and survived. Through it all, Henry kept working. Because every extra hour meant food on his plate. Every coin earned was a small victory against the loneliness and hardship. And maybe, just maybe, a step closer to a future where he wouldn't have to struggle alone. The town was buzzing with excitement that week. A famous actor, Johnny Depp, was visiting. Some said he was there to shoot a movie nearby. Others whispered it was a personal trip, a chance to escape the bright lights of the big city for a while. Whatever the reason, the news spread like wildfire. Shops put up posters, cafes talked about his arrival, and people waited eagerly, hoping for a glimpse of the star. But through all the excitement, Henry stayed the same. His world didn't change just because a celebrity was in town. He kept his routine, going to work early, staying late, carrying on quietly with the life he'd known for decades. To most people, Henry was invisible, a shadow in the background of their busy lives. Johnny Depp's arrival was a splash of color in the town's gray routine. He moved through the streets with a calm, easy smile, shaking hands with locals and quietly observing the world around him. On his first night, after a long day of meetings and shoots, Johnny decided to take a walk through the quieter parts of town. That's when he saw Henry. Under the weak glow of a flickering street light, Henry was still at work. His hands moved slowly but steadily, his face focused and tired. Johnny paused, curious. There was something about this man, something real, something raw, that stood out from the usual scenes of fame and glamour Johnny was used to. He watched for a moment, then took a step closer. Henry looked up, surprised to see someone there so late, but Johnny smiled gently, not with the flash of a star, but with the kindness of a stranger. "Hello," Johnny said softly. "Mind if I watch you work for a bit?" Henry hesitated. He wasn't used to visitors, especially not famous ones. But there was no judgment in Johnny's eyes, only interest and respect. Slowly Henry nodded. That small moment sparked something neither of them expected. Johnny stayed, asking quiet questions about the work, the tools, the long hours. Henry answered, his voice steady but cautious, unsure why this stranger cared. As they talked, a connection grew, built on respect and simple human kindness. Johnny learned about Henry's life, the struggles hidden beneath his worn hands and tired eyes. And Henry, who had spent so many years alone, found himself sharing stories with someone who truly listened. No cameras, no flashing lights, just two people meeting in the quiet night. It was a meeting that would change everything. From that night on, Johnny found reasons to return. At first it was just a few moments here and there, an evening stroll that ended by Henry's workshop, a quick chat over a cup of coffee at the local cafe. Slowly their conversations grew longer, deeper. Johnny listened carefully, as Henry shared pieces of his life, never pushing, always respectful. Henry talked about the days when the workshop was full of young hands, the town alive with laughter and energy. He spoke about his wife Mary, whose smile had once brightened the darkest winters, about the children they raised, and how life's twists had taken them far away. Johnny could hear the love in Henry's voice, but also the ache of loss. "I've been working here since I was a young man," Henry said one night, his eyes reflecting the dim light of the workshop. "It's all I know. It kept me going, kept me alive when things were hard." Johnny was moved, but he never wanted to take away Henry's pride. The old man's independence was clear. He wanted to live life on his own terms, even if those terms were difficult. So Johnny chose a different path, helping quietly, without drawing attention. He left small gifts, warm socks, fresh bread from the bakery, a thick sweater he bought from a local shop, items Henry might need but never asked for. Sometimes Johnny would fix a broken chair, or clean the workshop while Henry was away, always making sure it looked like it had been done by accident, or by a kind neighbor. These subtle acts brought moments of warmth and even laughter. One evening, Henry returned to find his tools neatly arranged, his old radio working again. He looked around, confused and amused. "Looks like someone's been busy," he muttered, shaking his head with a small smile. Johnny's presence was a gentle reminder that Henry was not alone, even when he tried to be. Then one night, Henry shared something he had never told anyone before, a secret from his past that surprised Johnny, and changed how he saw the old man forever. Henry had once been a soldier, a young man full of dreams and courage. He had fought in a war that had left scars deeper than anyone could see. Johnny listened as Henry spoke about the battles, the friends lost, and the pain that followed long after the guns had fallen silent. "I never talked about it," Henry said quietly, "not even to my family. I wanted to protect them from the darkness I carried inside." Johnny felt a deep respect and sorrow. Here was a man who had faced unimaginable hardships, and yet, after all that, he still stood strong, working every day to survive with dignity. Their friendship grew not just from curiosity or kindness, but from a genuine understanding. Two very different lives, connected by respect, compassion, and a shared belief in the strength of the human spirit. Johnny's visits became the highlight of Henry's days. And Henry's stories, wisdom and quiet humor brought a new light to Johnny's time in the town. No one else could see the bond forming between them, not yet, but what started as a chance encounter was becoming something rare and beautiful. A true friendship born from unlikely beginnings. Word about Johnny Depp's quiet visits to Henry began to spread, though no one knew the full story. It started with small rumors, whispers in the bakery, chatter at the cafe, curious glances when Johnny was seen walking near Henry's workshop. The town had always known Henry as a lonely, hard-working man, but now, something was changing. At first some people felt a strange mix of surprise and disbelief. Why would someone like Johnny Depp spend time with old Henry, they wondered. What's going on there? What's going on there? But as more details leaked, the town's feelings shifted. They stopped seeing Henry as just a poor tired man to pity. Instead they began to admire him. It wasn't just because a famous actor cared. It was because Henry's pride and strength had caught Johnny's attention, and through him the whole town's. People started to look at Henry differently, with respect and even a little awe. He wasn't just surviving, he was standing tall, quietly facing hardships that many couldn't imagine. But the changes brought a challenge for Henry himself. Johnny's kindness, so carefully offered without fanfare, had opened a door. The town began to hope Henry would accept help, not just from Johnny, but from neighbors too. Offers of warm meals, invitations to community events, even suggestions to ease his workload came with good intentions. Yet Henry hesitated. Deep inside, he wrestled with his pride. Accepting help felt like admitting weakness, and after so many years of fighting to stand on his own, that was hard to swallow. He wanted to keep his independence, to prove to himself and others that he could face life's struggles without losing dignity. One evening, Henry sat alone in his dim apartment, the silence heavier than usual. He thought about the meals he barely had, the cold nights, the pain in his joints. But he also thought about the visits from Johnny, the gentle gestures, the quiet friendship that had become a lifeline. What if he let someone in? What if he accepted help, and showed that even a proud man needed kindness sometimes? The decision wasn't easy, it was a battle between the heart and the stubborn spirit that had carried him through 90 years. Meanwhile, the town waited. They wanted to do something, to show Henry that he was not alone anymore. But they didn't want to force him, or make him feel like a charity case. As days passed, the suspense grew. Would Henry open the door to a new chapter, or would he close it tight, holding on to his pride, even if it meant more struggle? No one could say. Not yet. What was certain was that something had shifted in this small town. A story that began with quiet loneliness was now turning into a lesson about respect, kindness, and the unexpected ways people can change each other's lives. And Henry's choice would soon become the moment everyone talked about, the moment when the old man's world changed forever. One chilly evening, Henry finally made his decision. He invited Johnny to his small apartment, not as a guest of charity, but as a friend. It was a quiet moment, filled with unspoken respect, and a humble acceptance that no one is truly alone. "I can't do this all by myself anymore," Henry said softly, his voice steady but honest. Maybe it's okay to let some help in." Johnny smiled, knowing this was a powerful moment, not just for Henry, but for everyone watching silently from afar. News of Henry's choice spread quickly through the town. Inspired by Johnny's kindness and Henry's courage to accept help, the whole community began to come together. Neighbors started checking in more often, offering warm meals, sharing stories, and creating a support network that Henry had never allowed before. But even as his life began to change, Henry's spirit remained unbroken. He still worked when he could, still carried himself with that quiet dignity, but now he did so with a little less struggle and a little more hope. The workshop that once echoed with silence now felt warmer. The nights Henry spent alone grew fewer. And in those moments, when he felt tired or weak, he remembered the simple truth: strength isn't only about standing alone, it's about knowing when to lean on others. Henry's story became more than just about survival. It became a reminder that kindness can bridge even the widest gaps, and that no matter how hard life gets, the human spirit can still shine bright. Henry's story shows us the incredible power of kindness, and the strength of dignity in the face of hardship. Sometimes, all it takes is a simple gesture to change a life, and remind us that no one should have to struggle alone. If Henry's journey touched your heart, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift. And don't forget to share this story with someone who might need a little hope today. Together we can spread kindness and light in the darkest places.